Step out of the vehicle. Now.
Officer, I've given you my license and registration. I've explained that my tail light—
I said step out of the vehicle.
Step out of the vehicle, now. His hand was on his holster. Not resting, gripping. Officer, I've given you my license and registration. I've explained that my tail light. I said step out of the vehicle. I have a right to know why. Ma'am, I'm not going to ask again. It was 7:43 p.m. on a Thursday. I was driving home from work. A 12-hour day, back-to-back meetings, the kind of exhaustion that settles into your bones and makes you dream of a hot bath and silence. My taillight was out. I knew it was out. I'd noticed it that morning and made a mental note to get it fixed over the weekend. That was my crime. A broken taillight. The officer had pulled me over on a residential street. Quiet neighborhood, oak trees, American flags on porches. The kind of place where nothing bad is supposed to happen. I'd pulled over immediately, turned off the engine, put my hands on the steering wheel where he could see them. I know the protocol. Every black person in America knows the protocol. He approached my window with his flashlight aimed at my face. Didn't introduce himself. Didn't explain why he'd stopped me. Just shined that light in my eyes like he was looking for something. License and registration. Of course, they're in my purse. I'm going to reach for it slowly. Keep your hands where I can see them. I can't get my license if I can't reach my purse. He didn't respond. Just kept the light in my face. I moved slowly. Deliberately. Narrating every movement like my life depended on it. Because it might. I'm reaching into my purse now. I'm getting my wallet. I'm pulling out my license. He took it without a word. Walked back to his patrol car. I sat there, hands still on the steering wheel. Heart pounding. I've been pulled over before. Every black person has a story. Usually it's just uncomfortable, degrading, a reminder that no matter what you achieve, you're still subject to someone else's suspicion. But this felt different. The way he gripped his holster. The tension in his voice. The way he hadn't smiled once. Something was wrong. He came back 7 minutes later. But he wasn't alone. Another patrol car had pulled up behind his. 2 more officers. For a broken taillight. Ma'am, step out of the vehicle. Why? What's happening? There's an issue with your registration. Step out. There's no issue with my registration. I renewed it 2 months ago. Ma'am, I'm not going to ask you again. This is the moment. The moment every black person fears. The moment where everything can go wrong. Where a misunderstanding becomes a confrontation. Where a traffic stop becomes a headline. Where you become a hashtag. I opened the door slowly. Stepped out with my hands visible. Please tell me what's happening. Turn around, hands on the vehicle. I have a right to know why. Hands on the vehicle. He was shouting now. The other 2 officers had moved closer. Hands on their weapons. All 3 of them. For me. A woman in a business suit. Driving a Lexus. With a broken taillight. I put my hands on the car. Felt the cold metal against my palms. Felt the heat of humiliation rising in my chest. Felt the eyes of neighbors peering through windows. There's a warrant associated with this plate, he said. That's impossible. Are you calling me a liar? I'm telling you there's a mistake. This is my car. I've owned it for 3 years. There's no warrant. We'll see about that. He grabbed my wrist. Hard. Started to put me in handcuffs. And something in me broke. Not the part that was scared. The part that had spent 47 years being careful. Being polite. Being small. Officer, stop. My voice changed. Not louder, but different. The voice I use in courtrooms. The voice that makes people listen. Before you put those handcuffs on me, I need you to call your supervisor. Right now. Lady, I don't take orders from. You're about to. Because I'm Judge Patricia Reynolds, 6th Circuit Court of Appeals, and you're making a very serious mistake. He laughed. Actually laughed. Sure you are, and I'm the chief of police. Call it in, call my name in, right now. I don't need to call anything in. You're being detained until we sort out this warrant. There is no warrant. You've confused my plate with someone else's. It happens. But what doesn't need to happen is you putting handcuffs on a federal judge in the middle of the street. The other 2 officers had gone quiet. One of them, younger, maybe late 20s, was looking at me differently now. Reynolds, he said. Wait, Judge Reynolds, the Judge Reynolds. The first officer stopped. You know her. Bro, she literally ruled on the Morrison case, the police brutality case. It was all over the news. I watched the color drain from the first officer's face. Watched him do the calculation in his head. Watched him realize that the woman he'd been shouting at, grabbing, preparing to handcuff in front of witnesses, was someone who could end his career with a phone call. His hand released my wrist. Ma'am, Your Honor, there seems to have been a misunderstanding. There was no misunderstanding. You saw a black woman in a nice car and decided something was wrong. That's not, the system flagged your plate. Then the system made an error. But the system didn't tell you to grab my wrist. The system didn't tell you to call for backup over a taillight. The system didn't tell you to escalate before asking a single question. That was you. He didn't have an answer. None of them did. They just stood there. 3 armed men who had been ready to arrest me 5 minutes ago. Now looking at the ground. Now searching for words. Now terrified of consequences. The younger officer stepped forward. Your Honor, I'm so sorry. Please, we didn't know. That's the problem. You didn't know. And you didn't care. Because if I wasn't a judge, if I was just a woman driving home from work, this would have ended very differently. I let that sit. Let them feel the weight of it. I want your names, all 3 of you. I want your badge numbers. And I want your supervisor here in the next 10 minutes. The first officer started to protest. Your Honor, I'm sure we can resolve this without. The time for resolution was before you put your hands on me. Now it's documentation. The supervisor arrived in 8 minutes. Sergeant Williams, a black man in his 50s. He took one look at the scene and understood. Judge Reynolds, I am deeply sorry, whatever happened here. What happened here is what happens every day. The only difference is who it happened to. He nodded slowly. I understand. Do you? Because I've been watching these cases come across my desk for 20 years, and every time someone says they understand, and nothing changes. I drove home that night with shaking hands. Not from fear anymore. From rage. My husband, David, was in the kitchen when I walked in. He saw my face and stopped mid-sentence. What happened? I told him. Every detail. The flashlight in my face. The hand on the holster. The backup called. The wrist grabbed. The moment I had to use my title like a weapon, just to be treated like a human being. He held me while I cried. David is white. We've been married 23 years. He's seen enough to understand. But understanding isn't the same as living it. What are you going to do? He asked. I don't know yet. You could file a complaint. You could go to the press. You could. I know what I could do. I'm not sure what I should do. Because here's the thing. If I file a complaint, if I make this public, it becomes about me. Judge Reynolds mistreated during traffic stop. Headlines, outraged apologies. But what about everyone else? What about the woman who doesn't have a title? Who doesn't have a law degree? Who doesn't have the luxury of invoking power to stop what's happening to her? I thought about my mother that night. About the stories she told me when I was young. Growing up in Mississippi in the 1950s. The signs that said where she could and couldn't go. The rules about how to talk to white people. The fear that lived in her body until the day she died. She used to say, "Baby, you're going to change things. You're going to sit in rooms where they don't expect you, and you're going to make them see you." I believed her. I became the first Black woman on my law school's journal, the first Black woman partner at my firm, the first Black woman pointed to the Sixth Circuit from my state. I sat in all those rooms. I made them see me. But on that Thursday night, on that quiet street, none of that mattered. Because to that officer, I was just another Black woman. Suspicious by default. Guilty until proven otherwise. My degrees couldn't protect me. My title only mattered after I said it. A week later, I was in my chambers, reviewing briefs, preparing for arguments, when my clerk knocked on the door. "Your Honor, the officer is here, the one from the traffic stop. He's requesting a meeting." I almost said no. What could he possibly say that would matter? What apology could undo what happened? But something made me pause. Maybe it was the judge in me, the part that believes people can change. Or maybe it was just curiosity. Send him in. His name was Officer Derek Miller, 34 years old, 8 years on the force. He walked into my chambers like a man walking to his execution. "Your Honor, I appreciate you seeing me." "Sit down, Officer Miller." He sat, hands clasped, eyes on the floor. "Why are you here?" "I came to apologize, in person, for how I treated you." "Do you know why I agreed to see you?" "No, ma'am." "Because I wanted to ask you something, and I want you to answer honestly." "Of course." I leaned forward. "If you'd never found out who I was, if I was just a woman with a broken taillight, what would have happened?" He didn't answer right away. I watched him wrestle with the truth. I probably would have detained you, run a more thorough check, maybe taken you in while we sorted out the plate issue. Arrested me for someone else's warrant based on a system error. "Yes, ma'am." And when I protested, when I said there was a mistake, he looked up. And for the first time, I saw something in his eyes that might have been shame. "I would have assumed you were lying." "Why?" "Because," he stopped, started again. "Because that's what we're trained to expect. Resistance, deception, threats. We're taught that everyone is a potential danger, that we have to control every situation. Even a middle-aged woman in a business suit." "Your Honor, I know how it sounds. Do you know that I've spent my entire career being controlled, being managed, being made to feel like I'm the threat in every room I enter? And that night on that street, I was reminded that all my years of work, all my accomplishments, none of it means anything until I prove who I am." He was quiet. I continued. "Officer Miller, I've presided over dozens of cases involving police misconduct, excessive force, wrongful arrests, constitutional violations, and in every single case the defense is the same. I feared for my safety. I was following protocol. I didn't know." "Your Honor, but here's what I've learned. The fear is selective. The protocol is applied selectively. The not knowing, that's a choice to see some people as threats and others as citizens." He didn't argue. He just sat there, taking it in. "I'm not going to file a formal complaint," I said. His head snapped up. "You're not?" "No, because a complaint makes this about me. And it's not about me. It's about everyone who doesn't have a title to invoke, everyone who can't call a supervisor, everyone who ends up in handcuffs or worse because someone like you made a decision based on how they looked." I stood up, walked to the window. "What I want from you, Officer Miller, is different. I want you to remember this, not the fear of consequences, not the relief that I'm not filing a complaint. I want you to remember how certain you were that I was wrong, how quickly you escalated, how easily you could have destroyed an innocent person's life." "I will, Your Honor. I swear I will." "And the next time you approach a vehicle, any vehicle, I want you to ask yourself, am I responding to what's actually happening, or to what I expect to happen because of who I see?" He left my chambers 15 minutes later. I don't know if he changed. I don't know if our conversation mattered. People make promises in moments of shame that they forget when the pressure fades. But I had to try. Because what's the alternative? Rage without purpose. Power without responsibility. I've spent my career believing in the system, believing that laws can change behavior, that institutions can evolve, that justice, real justice, is possible. But nights like that Thursday test that belief. They remind me that the system isn't a machine. It's people. People who carry biases they don't even know they have. People who make split-second decisions based on fear and assumption. People who hold power over life and death, and sometimes wield it carelessly. 3 months after the incident, I was invited to speak at a police academy graduation. The irony wasn't lost on me. But I accepted. I stood in front of 200 new officers. Fresh uniforms, eager faces, ready to serve and protect. And I told them my story. Not as a judge. As a woman who was afraid on a Thursday evening. You are entering a profession with enormous power, I said. The power to detain, the power to arrest, the power to use force. And with that power comes a responsibility that many of you don't fully understand yet. I paused. Every person you encounter is someone. They're someone's mother, someone's daughter, someone's partner, someone's child. They have a life, a story, a reason for being where they are. And in the moment you approach them, they're also scared, because they don't know which version of you they're going to get. The room was silent. I've been a federal judge for 11 years. I've put people in prison. I've overturned convictions. I've ruled on cases that shaped national policy. But on a Thursday night in April, none of that protected me, because the officer who pulled me over didn't see a judge. He saw a threat, and he was wrong. I let that land. You will be wrong too. At some point in your career, you will make an assumption about someone based on how they look, based on where they are, based on what you expect rather than what's true. The question is, what will you do in that moment? Will you escalate, or will you pause? After the ceremony, a young woman approached me. Black, 23, brand new badge. She was crying. Your Honor, I grew up being afraid of police. My brother was stopped 14 times before he turned 18. 14 times, and he never did anything wrong. Why did you join? Because I want to be different. I want to be the officer I wish my brother had encountered. I hugged her. Right there, in front of everyone. Because that's the only hope. Not just laws. Not just rulings. People who choose to be different. I still drive that same route home. Past that same street where it happened. And every time, I think about the woman I could have been. The woman without a title. Without power. Without a way to make them stop. She's out there right now. Being pulled over. Being questioned. Being grabbed. And nobody's freezing. Nobody's apologizing. Nobody's calling her Your Honor. She's just trying to get home. Same as me. Same as you. The question I keep asking isn't whether things will change. It's whether we'll be the ones to change them. Not with speeches. Not with outrage. But with the small choices. The daily decisions. The moments when nobody important is watching, and we treat people with dignity anyway. Because the truth is, they shouldn't have frozen when they learned who I was. They should have treated me like a human being before they knew. That's not a high bar. That's the bare minimum. And until the bare minimum becomes automatic, for everyone, the work isn't done. So here's what I want you to sit with tonight. Not my story. Yours. How do you treat people when you don't know who they are? When there's no title to invoke? When there's no consequence for cruelty? That's where the truth lives. That's where change begins. This is Reality Voice. If this story made you think about your own moments, the times you've been misjudged, or the times you've misjudged others, you're in the right place. Leave a comment. Tell me about the moment someone treated you differently once they found out who you were. And if you're still here, still sitting with this, subscribe. Because these are the stories that need to be told. Not for entertainment. For change. What if the respect we save for the powerful was the default for everyone?